do you ever feel like zombies just isn't the same anymore? Now, I don't want to get anyone into a negative perception, and if you want to dislike the video, go ahead. I don't really care. It's just, I want people to know I've always wanted the most positive output for COD Zombies, but a lot of people can definitely tell that something is missing. So Radical Quail here has brought us this incredible video about where that point might have started
From its
in
inception,
COD Zombies.
Call of Duty Zombies has been more than just a game mode.
Yeah.
It's been an experience, an art form that has terrified and amazed players for over a decade.
Exactly.
We have played maps like Verrucht or Kino der Toten that disturbed us when we were younger. As we got older, we enjoyed the epicness of maps like Dreisendrach and Origins.
They grew
But
up with
today,
us.
Most of us don't enjoy modern zombies nearly as much as the old stuff. And
Yeah.
while there are a few reasons for that,
And I want to say this, like, I don't think modern zombies is necessarily bad. Like, I enjoyed maps like Citadel Day more and even Shattered Veil, but it's just like the longevity and the livelihood behind them is definitely not the same as what it once used to be.
the biggest one is without a doubt the downfall of art direction in COD Zombies.
Yeah.
So, let's start from the beginning. Chapter 1: The Era of Fear. At this point, it is crucial to understand that COD Zombies was never intended to become anything. It was developed by a small group of employees at Treyarch, where it eventually reached the attention of Activision.
It wasn't
who
supposed
allowed
to
them
come out.
Put the side mode in the upcoming game.
It's only thanks to the World at War campaign that we even have zombies today,
was
man.
introduced with the launch of Call of Duty World at War on November 11th, 2008. However, Zombies wasn't listed as another game mode like it is today. Upon completing the campaign or connecting to online servers, the player was granted access to the mysterious Zombies game mode.
Yeah,
It was
and that's the other thing. When you first played, you couldn't just click zombies and play it. You had to beat the campaign on World at War to get it, which was an amazing reward. And they don't do that type of stuff nowadays.
essentially a mission to see how long you could survive slaying zombified German soldiers. There was no overarching storyline, no main quest, no bright colors. Zombies was about one thing: survival. Now that you have some context about the creation of COD Zombies, what made up the art direction of the first ever Zombies map, Nacht der Untoten?
It wasn't all color as well back in the day. I mean, look at Noct. It's literally white, black, and gray.
The German name Nacht der Untoten translates to English as Night of the Undead.
It's a real place, too.
Which perfectly describes the map. The player is suffocated in a small bunker occupied by German forces within an abandoned airfield. Perks and Pack-a-Punch were not yet created, leaving wall buys and the mystery box as the only form of protection. There truly is very little to Nacht der Untoten, just the player and their rapidly growing anxiety as the rounds increase. As far as art direction goes, the lighting of the map is very grim. Dim, flickering lights cast eerie shadows across the damaged concrete walls. The faint glow of the mystery box in the distance feels like the only sign of hope amidst the suffocating darkness.
I mean, this map is practically monochromatic. Like, it's like the Ascension map.
Even when peering
you first start
outside the
up.
map, a cloud of fog consumes your vision, making you feel even more trapped. The whole experience feels almost as if you're in a nightmare with nowhere to escape. However, it doesn't quite end here. Due to Call of Duty Zombies not being planned, there was no initial story until later maps began implementing a broad narrative. Because of this, there are no player voice lines on the original World at War Nacht der Untoten. No silly characters
Only the
like
announcer.
Richthofen or Nikolai to comfort you in this terrifying
Only the
endeavor.
announcer.
Despite
Yeah, it
the
was very
lack of
freaky.
main character voice lines, there were plenty of spooky ambient sounds and zombie voices to be heard.
Yeah. Ambience was such an incredible part of the original game. And if you go back and play World at War Noct, I just got to round 30 on it, and it's freaking tough and horrifying.
Early on, Treyarch
Like, they
leaned
nailed
heavily
that.
into the anxieties of early zombies, which gets even more extreme in the very next map.
Exactly. Yeah, and perks, they don't really help that much on Verrucht. Like, Jug, I guess, does, but Quick Revive does nothing in this map, you know?
Verrucht, or its English translation, Crazy, is set within an abandoned insane asylum in Wittenau, Germany, a district in northwest Berlin. Verrucht features a brighter color palette than Nacht, with a heavy emphasis on tans. The designs throughout
Tan,
the building
brown,
are much more
orange,
detailed, with
yellow.
checkered floors making up one side. The layout of the map creates a square around the center courtyard, which is inaccessible to the player but creates a nice eerie aesthetic.
And people still regard this map as the scariest zombies map to ever exist out of all the games. And I think that just says something about its artistic design right there. Even though it was so simple, it went so far.
Unlike the thick fog surrounding Nacht, Verrück's exterior featured fenced-off courtyards, ruined buildings, and scattered trees, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Now, in order to make up for this increase of colors, space, visual elements, and the introduction of perks, Verrückt had to go above and beyond to make the map feel just as scary and isolating as Nacht and Toten felt.
Exactly.
And Treyarch did just that.
Yep.
Verrückt had significantly more unsettling sounds. A bloody dentist chair that plays echoey memories of drills spinning and patients screaming.
Yeah. And even though the ambience did change later on,
Distant
it still
crying
kept that
sounds,
level of creative artistic design, you know?
alarms and spooky noises coming from the power box.
And realness, you know? This was really based on reality back in the day. Yeah.
On top
You don't really get this type of ambience anymore in zombies, and you should.
of this, the map was more difficult than Nacht. While
Yep.
Verrückt wasn't drastically larger, its narrow hallways and sharp corners made movement more claustrophobic and unpredictable. The isolation of the map expanded even further for co-op. Players within the same game would be split up from spawn, having to open the majority of the map to reunite with each other. Gameplay choices such as this describe exactly how Zombies was intended to feel in the beginning. The developers wanted to incite fear into the player, making them feel isolated and uncomfortable.
It's sad that very few maps have even done what Verrückt has done. There's only been like 2 ever after this point, which would have been like Dead of the Night and Exo Zombies Carrier, which is just not the same vibe as what Verrückt was trying to do.
At this stage, Zombies was truly about horror, and it's
Yeah.
no secret why Verrückt is usually described as the scariest Zombies map. Following Verrückt, Treyarch moved in a much different direction.
True. But Shinonuma still did great. You know, still brought... This is the map that started the whole storyline. People don't give Shinonuma enough credit, I feel like. It's definitely the most hated World at War map. It's an incredible map, though.
Leaving the constraints of German locations, Shinonuma took place in a 115 infected swamp in Japan. Unlike previous maps, this one felt as though the environment was your enemy. The invasive nature of the swamp seeped into the structures of the map, feeling almost as hostile as the zombies themselves. The wooden buildings felt unsafe as the swamp was slowly consuming them.
This was also back when zombies used to have a personality. Like, the zombies you'd fight in Shinonuma moved differently because they were Japanese soldiers, as opposed to, like, the Nocturne Toten Verrückt zombies. So, just miss that. Like, the little things like this that made World at War and BO1 so much more alive.
Verrückt had a straight-up horror feeling, while Shinonuma was eerie and mysterious. But that did not mean it didn't have some extremely gruesome elements, and without getting too much into it, Peter McCain is a prime example. Overall, Shinonuma was highly anxiety and fear-driven, yet it showcased Treyarch's ability to get more creative with it, stepping out of a German location and placing the player in the swamps of Japan.
But it was really this map that popularized zombies, right? And brought it to the forefront of a lot of
The fear
entertainment.
continues into Der Ries, mostly due to its great innovations. This map introduces a variety of staples in the zombies fandom, including Pack-a-Punch, the Monkey Bomb, teleporters, and more. The new innovations brought a complexity and scale to zombies we have not yet seen, making a game mode built on overwhelming the player even more overwhelming. Despite introducing new mechanics, Der Ries maintained a haunting tone.
And we watched a video that basically said that Der Ries started the whole quest line of zombies being the Pack-a-Punch. That was like the very first thing now that you do in every single zombies map after Der Ries.
Bloodstained labs, failed experiments, and Samantha's chilling laughter made it clear. Group 935's scientific ambitions
And then
had
the whole
spiraled
launch of the
into
story.
something truly horrifying. At this point, there were 4 World at War maps, and Treyarch was soon to have their next game come out. On November 9th, 2010, Call of Duty Black Ops released, and with it, 2 brand new zombie maps. The first of which was Kino der Toten, or Cinema of the Dead.
Cinema of the Dead, man. Yep. And then this is where I feel like it exploded and people were into the high
This
round
zombies
scene, Thunder
experience
Gun.
was actually
like,
intended to be in World at War,
Yeah.
but the developers decided it would make more sense as the first map in Black Ops. The Cinema of the Dead is another map taking place in World War II Germany, this time in an abandoned theater. Despite being in a brand new game with higher quality gameplay and graphics, Kino der Toten was extremely similar to its World at War counterpart.
If Kino was released in World at War, it would not have had the same impact. Like, that's
It's a German
what everybody
facility
needs to
overrun
realize,
by
you know?
zombies, and as
Black
far
Ops
as
1 was just
innovation
that
goes,
iconic.
it doesn't add too much from the previous game. However,
Yeah.
the one aspect that Kino innovates in is its design creativity. The first 3 maps in World at War were excessively straightforward. Nacht was a tiny 2-story bunker, Verrückt was a 2-story building molded into a square, and Shino Numa was a small swamp connected by the building in the spawn room. Der Ries, and specifically Kino der Toten, created much more complex layout designs. For example, Kino has the spawn room with the beautiful iconic staircases. It also has the main stage room and even a little side area in the alley. Kino feels much more like a complete location compared to the sectioned off areas of previous maps. At this point, Zombies was no longer a fun little side project. It had morphed into a fully fledged game mode.
Yeah, I think Der Ries really started the iconicism of what made it a fundamental pillar of the Call of Duty formula.
Despite all this newfound creativity, the developers did not take any steps back in the fear department. The unsettling sounds and frightening ambience was still there, exactly like we saw it in World at War. The other launch map was vastly different from anything we have seen thus far.
With the whole JFK files releasing, it just shows how iconic this map was still to so many people. Like, this map was such an incredible experience after the BO1 campaign as well. It really just fit in. It's interesting now that, like, even with Cold War, we had maps that were from the campaign, but not really based off the campaign, like 5, you know? And it's kind of interesting because they kind of tried to tie in zombies and campaign, but it's just not the same emphasis as it was back then.
5 took zombies into a popular real-world setting for the very first time, the Pentagon. While it wasn't as destroyed as Kino or Verrückt, this map was far from pristine. Bloodstains, bullet holes, and shattered glass told the story of a government facility that had fallen into chaos. The aesthetics were moved far away from the desolate horrors of the previous maps and shifted into a much different form of fear. While 5 had some open areas like the spawn room and war room, much of the map forced players into tight corridors and labs. These confined spaces, combined with aggressive zombie spawns, made 5 feel extremely suffocating.
And that's the thing, because in BO1 and World at War, it went from a fear narrative into more of a, like, adventure narrative after, with BO2, BO3, and even BO4. And that narrative doesn't really have a meaning, I would say, now in Cold War and BO6, other than, like, Warzone, you know? And they brought back Richtofen and Shattered Veil, and they crashed the veil between all the storylines and stuff, but it still doesn't really have its own identity like these maps did, in my opinion.
Was obviously very risky when dealing with hordes of zombies. On top of this, the teleporters were also difficult to deal with. Unlike previous maps, 5's teleporters sent players to semi-randomized locations, making escape routes unreliable and often putting them in worse positions than before. Still, 5's hatred of the player was not done there. This map also brought in the Pentagon Thief, a sly figure who sprinted at you with the sole objective of stealing your weapon. While offering a fun and unique mechanic to the map, it helped contribute to the player's fear.
I think that's kind of another issue. Is, like, it's insane now. One of the most innovative bosses we've ever had was, like, the first boss that we had on 5. Whereas back in the day, like, or now I would say, you have bosses that are, like, slightly bigger or more health, or maybe they shoot something at you or they spawn a couple more zombies. But it's like, it's not really the same level of, like, coolness as, like, what the Pentagon Thief established.
Brought a whole new version of challenge to the zombies mode. Overall, 5 wasn't quite as fear-inducing as some of the World at War maps in terms of aesthetics, but the gameplay was becoming more and more complex, and still was fairly challenging, which continued zombies' early goal of fear, but it also marked a shift, moving away from pure horror and into high-stakes, strategy-driven gameplay.
And into a narrative as well. Like, BO1 kind of started it, but it was really solidified with Victor Invictus and BO2 Transit.
This was only the beginning of the mode's evolving identity.
Yeah. Then Ascension turned everything around with the first Easter egg, right? Like, you can see how everything morphed to where we are.
An important map for the history of zombies.
Yeah.
It introduced the first main quest Easter egg, offered the most expansive map at the time, and had the most interesting form of travel yet, with the lunar lander. While Ascension lacked the raw terror of its predecessors, it still had unsettling elements. The map opened in a washed out black and white filter, giving players an eerie, lifeless introduction.
The zombie models also on this map freak me out, and the way they like dodge and like roll and stuff, that was one of the coolest aspects of Ascension. Like, honestly, Ascension has become kind of an underrated map over the years.
The launch facility itself was run down and abandoned, with echoes of machinery humming in the background. However, compared to past maps, Ascension felt more open, larger, and less isolating, making it the first major step away from zombies' roots of horror. A big aspect of making the player feel terrified while playing zombies comes down to how small you make them feel. In World at War, the maps were quite compact and felt like tiny parts of larger areas you were hopelessly trapped within. Now, with maps like Ascension, you felt some freedom. It was largely outside, felt big in scale, you could fly over the map, and there was a main quest.
But still confined as well. It still kept this idea of like going against what we have nowadays, which is open world zombies, which is completely against what zombies used to be. It's about confinement, small spaces, and being restricted and doing the best with what you can.
Effectively beating the game for the first time ever in zombies. Ascension truly acts as a turning point in COD Zombies.
Yeah, massive turning point. And then my GOAT, Call of the Dead out here. Yes, sir.
Call of the Dead introduced a unique and oppressive atmosphere. The foggy, snow-covered Siberian coast, combined with abandoned ships and an ominous lighthouse, made it one of the most isolating maps in zombies history. It felt like a place you were never meant to escape from. Call of the Dead made the environment just as deadly as the zombies themselves. The icy water slowed players, making them easy prey, while the harsh blizzards and constant fog limited visibility, increasing the feeling of helplessness. Despite being a map that takes place primarily outside, Call of the Dead has plenty of tight spaces and corridors, which feels even more compact with George Romero chasing you around. George wasn't just a boss, he was a constant looming threat.
He's a legend, man. It's like the Technoblade reference in Minecraft. Like, this bro was literally what started zombies, you know? It's like that type of incredible reference. So, again, Black Ops 1 just innovated so hard on the boss zombies. Like, the fact that people can say even, like, the monkeys were the weakest and yet they were still innovative just goes to show a lot, man.
His presence meant players had to be mindful of every shot fired, as angering him would send him into a furious sprint. Mr. Romero never truly left. Even if defeated, he always came back, reinforcing the feeling that you were never truly safe. Call of the Dead is a bit more unnerving than 5 and Ascension, yet the likes of George Romero and the weakness of the wonder weapons makes the gameplay of this map the driving factor of fear. Call of the Dead wasn't terrifying in a traditional sense, but it introduced a new kind of fear, one driven by constant danger rather than an eerie atmosphere.
And that helps with the layout as well, and this also escalated the story of Black Ops 1 and introduced the idea of celebrity casts, which is just not a thing now in COD Zombies. That ended in BO4.
This map forced players to stay on edge at all times. It wasn't about scaring the player, it was about making them feel hunted.
Exactly. And then Shank, man, yes. This was really the changing point for a lot of people. The most hardcore zombies map,
fully embraced the idea of the map itself being an enemy. The temple's shifting pathways, deadly spike traps, and unpredictable mud pits constantly worked against the player. This was not a map that encouraged free movement. It forced players to adapt on the fly, adding another layer of difficulty to the ancient temple deep in the Himalayan mountains. As far as design goes, Shangri-La was the first zombies map to take place in broad daylight.
Still one of the most beautiful maps ever, and it goes against the stupid modern day argument that people were making that says like, oh, zombie maps have to be at nighttime. No, Shangri-La was what completely tore that expectation down, and it does it marvelously in my opinion.
a stark departure from the dark and grim locations of the past. However, the vibrant setting didn't eliminate fear, it simply reshaped it. The claustrophobic jungle, the temple's tight corridors, and the overwhelming presence of shriekers and napalm zombies made players feel stuck in an ancient death trap. Unfortunately, graphics at the time were a bit too underwhelming to create the atmosphere that was likely intended for this map.
Which is why Chronicles just does this map such a massive benefit, and it's still one of the most beautiful maps ever.
It's brighter, yet still dull.
Yeah.
Thankfully, on the other hand, the
That's
Black Ops
3
1 version in Zombies Chronicles did eventually do its atmosphere justice.
Exactly.
The Black Ops 1 edition still has plenty of fear-inducing elements within the gameplay, but this map took a massive step away from the fear aesthetics. Within the last few maps, Easter eggs had increasingly become more prominent, and making the player feel scared and uneasy was less of a focus. These emotions of fear and anxiety were still here, but mostly because of the difficulty and learning curve that each map had. In World at War, the maps were very straightforward.
And that's, I think, what gave Black Ops 1 much more of a replayability, is these little learning curves, which was escalated further with Easter egg steps and whatnot, but now is kind of stagnated back because it's reducing the amount of players. And I know with Black Ops 6, they added directed mode to try and increase the amount of players beating the Easter eggs, but it's still under 10%. So it's like, I don't really know what the perfect solution to that is, to be honest.
But each one since Der Riese took another step towards complexity and a step away from fear. The game mode was changing rapidly, and the next map pushed boundaries that no one ever thought would be possible for Call of Duty Zombies.
For 2011, this was the craziest announcement for a Zombies map ever. On the frickin' moon, on another planet, man. Like,
Chapter 2.
Insane.
The Era of Maximalism.
Yeah.
In case you are unfamiliar with the term maximalism, it essentially takes the common phrase less is more and replaces it with more is more. And DLC 4 of Black Ops 1 describes this idea perfectly.
The sound design of this map, too, was so innovative as well. Like, Treyarch really stepped up their game with this map.
Moon was a groundbreaking map that took zombies to a scale never seen before. It introduced low gravity, a functioning life support system, and even new enemies like the astronaut zombie. The Easter egg was the most complex yet. It required multiple steps involving special equipment like the hacker vice, coordinating with the excavators, and even manipulating QEDs. Additionally, it
and Gersh's too
was the first Easter egg to permanently alter the zombie storyline, culminating in the catastrophic destruction of the Earth.
This changed zombies forever, but in a great way, because if it didn't do it in this type of way, people would not have been so excited for Black Ops 2. Like, this is where the narrative, in my opinion, really began, because everybody was thinking, how are we going to continue with the Earth being blown up?
An event that directly set up Black Ops 2 Zombies.
Yeah.
We ended World at War with a simple German facility, and now Black Ops 1 was ending on the moon. This map still had fear-inducing elements, but that was no longer the goal. Treyarch moved on from the simple horror aspects of zombies and into this era of maximalism.
Yeah. And Transit, listen, people hate on this map, but it was still iconic enough for people to enjoy it.
Black Ops 2 brought a host of new features. Buildables, permaperks, the bank, and even new game modes. The launch map Transit also pushed the maximalism of this era into new heights. The biggest map ever took place in Hanford, Washington, and introduced features never before seen, like the bus.
Get this MW3 zombies out of here, Mo.
Even though parts of the map were creepy, such as the dense fog and the cornfields, the map itself wasn't trying to terrify the player like it had in the...
And it's interesting, because Transit is technically your first attempt at an open world zombies map, but it still does confinement better than even much of what happened after Cold War, which I find so fascinating, to be honest.
This new era was in full swing, and complex gameplay was now the purpose of zombies. In fact, Treyarch even took it too far. Transit was overly large, and due to graphical limitations, the developers were forced to put debilitating fog, lava, and denizens to slow down the player.
The original idea of Transit might have been the best zombies map on BO2, like neck and neck with Origins if it was executed properly.
Other innovations such as buildable levels were unique, but quite tedious as you could only hold one part at a time. Transit was so focused on being maximalist that it made some questionable innovations, causing the art direction to suffer quite a bit. Despite having great moments like Town and the Diner, the overall atmosphere of the map was a brown, foggy mess. Despite launching with Transit, Black Ops 2 also offered Nuketown Zombies for Season Pass buyers.
Yeah, like the combat training of zombies. It's like interesting how every single idea has really been executed, and a lot were play tested even on BO2 with a lot of these maps.
Experience was a zombified version of the classic multiplayer map Nuketown, set after the nuke went off right outside of the town. While holding maximalistic aspects such as the crazy concept and giant crater right outside of the map, it was relatively tame for this era. Nuketown Zombies is rather forgettable and doesn't add much to the tremendous catalog of Call of Duty.
True. People always forget about it, especially like with these big maps, Die Rise, Mob, Buried, and Origins, you know?
Die Rise's art direction is extremely interesting. The outside of the map is absolutely beautiful. It takes place on top of collapsing skyscrapers in China. Looking around at this destroyed civilization is awesome, and it comes with an even better skybox. Chunks of the earth float in the sky as comets streak past, creating a surreal, apocalyptic backdrop. This skybox, combined with a decimated skyline, creates a very unique look, something that you can only get with Die Rise. Most previous maps took place inside or had a foggy sky.
I would like to describe it as Transit was horizontal maximalism and Die Rise was vertical maximalism. And then that completely changed once Blundell got into the scene with Mob, because then he took zombies into a narrative. And I just have always said for zombies, like, people always complain like, oh, you don't know what you want. They're never going to make good quality maps because it's all free now. Why don't they just make more narrative one-off maps like Mob the Dead? This is what I've been asking for a long time. We don't need an overarching crew for all 4 of the zombie maps on one game.
Reese's Moon being the only major exception. While Die Rise innovated outside the map, it shared many of the gameplay issues that plagued Transit. When looking at the art direction, places like the spawn and rooftop were visually pleasing, while many of the inside corridors were forgettable at best. The skyscrapers themselves pulled off the destroyed look quite well, but the colors were a bit bland, something that Treyarch would later improve upon.
And again, Buried was a huge step up as well, because this was kind of like Jimmy Zielinski, David Vonderhaar's final Zombies map entry into Black Ops 2. And then that was kind of it, man. This is really where like things went crazy.
Maximalism is mostly due to its concept. This map takes place in a buried old western town under a collapsing mine in Africa. Now, if you've never played this map, I'm sure that made absolutely zero sense. To summarize, after the events of Moon, where we blow up the earth, the tectonic plates shift from the nukes, somehow transporting this western-style town into the depths of an African mine. That idea is absolutely insane, and I'm glad Treyarch was able to conceptualize it. The art design creates a nice contrast between the mine and the Wild West theme. The wooden, dust-covered structures of the Old West sharply contrast with the modern mining equipment and underground cave systems, ultimately giving the player the feeling that this combination should not exist. Set pieces such as the maze, the ghost mansion, and even the giant Arthur.
It's also like, this is what made zombies zombies. So many random bizarre concepts that somehow when you throw them together it works, and it works magnanimously beautiful. Like, it's just wow, like how did that work? You know, it's like he said, in Africa you got one of the best AI characters, there's a buried village, there's a witch mansion, there's a maze, and it works.
Adds to the map.
That's zombies
fun.
But we don't have that anymore.
Call of Duty Zombie.
Buried is such a great example of that. It's just not enough wacky concepts, I feel like, into COD Zombies now. They stick it really safe.
Is far into the maximalist era, leaving fear and anxiety largely out of the mode.
Yes.
Buried helps solidify this due to its goofy, over-the-top nature.
Very true.
Something that we could never have received in World at War.
And I don't think that goofy nature is a bad thing. Like, IW Zombies was very goofy, and there's still some of the best zombies maps ever made on that game, like Spaceland, right? So it's all about narrative, right? And I think that just goes away once Warzone mechanics are needed to be placed inside of every single zombies map. There's not enough identity, and also the developers, I feel like they don't even necessarily want to put their life and soul into each of these maps because they probably aren't even able to, because it's free DLC now. It's not something like these maps where they're all $15 each.
War. There is still a spooky ambience and unsettling sounds within these Black Ops 2 maps,
Yep.
but it's less common and less unsettling.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And like, you don't hear this ambience now. Each map you could identify because of its
ambience. The Call of Duty
ambience.
Zombies franchise takes a big shift. The lead director of Zombies, Jimmy Zielinski, was on his way out, effectively leaving the studio for Black Ops 3, and this left Jason Blundell leading the team for the next map, the brilliant Mob of the Dead.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I like how we sort of designed this, because it is true. I'm pretty much certain that Buried was kind of finished before Mob of the Dead. Mob of the Dead was being worked on for a really, really long time, because the idea behind this was that Zombies needs a desperate makeover. People are losing interest because of Transit and Die Rise, so the campaign team stepped up and made something incredible, and that was Jason Blundell.
Mob provided the community with a great storyline, atmosphere, and surprisingly a good amount of fear. It was truly the last point in Zombies history where fear was a large part of the design. Unsurprisingly, a zombified Alcatraz prison was scary. The gory set pieces, blood-painted messages, and horrific ending were all extremely important to the aesthetic of the map. It felt like for the first time in years, Zombies was going for a fearful art direction again. But in my opinion, this map combined the era of fear and maximalism perfectly, which is why it is considered one of the greatest maps of all time. The maximalism itself can best be seen through its horrors. The grotesque imagery of decay and death is pushed to the extreme, reinforcing the map's nightmarish setting. A giant zombie warden and prison guard zombies with glowing red eyes is nothing we would have ever seen in World at War. Yet, in some ways, it was even scarier. Unlike earlier maps that focused on survival horror, Mob of the Dead's fear was psychological.
Yeah, it's more about you can never escape the prison. Like that's why it just works so well on this map. Whereas I made this analogy in my Blood of the Dead review video. In Blood of the Dead, you feel like the guard of the prison, which doesn't really have the same effect as you feeling like the prisoner trying to escape, right?
Rooted in themes of eternal punishment and despair, the prison itself felt alive.
And it's true, and this is why we're fully into the narrative. We've left the fear aspect. Black Ops 1 kind of had a fear and adventure aspect, where World at War was just fear, and now BO2 is full-on narrative, and then again into BO3 and BO4. And then with the deterioration of too much emphasis on narrative, that's where you saw the deterioration of gameplay and what brought us into the Warzone mechanics, right? And that's even why Jason Blundell has publicly stated why he left, just because Call of Duty was changing the formula. They were going to Warzone,
trapping the characters in an endless cycle of torment. The dark, foggy scenery greatly added to this desolate feeling, and within the famous prison, COD Zombies finally brought back the unsettling ambience of the past. Overall, Mob of the Dead took the fear era and combined it with the maximalist era, creating an over-the-top, terrifying Zombies experience, which was a major reason why this map is so loved by the community.
Yeah. And then back-to-back bangers. And like, people argue from Mob of the Dead up until about like 9 or Ancient Evil, for a lot of people, even for myself, it was just back-to-back bangers. Back-to-back bangers. We didn't have one bad map in between all those. Mob of the Dead to Ancient Evil. Yeah, just back-to-back bangers.
Origins is an extremely important map within this era. It expanded the maximalism to a much further extent. Origins marks the introduction of the premise versions of our classic crew, Richtofen, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio. Unlike their previous appearances, these new characters were younger and from a new dimension.
And I feel at this point, Blundell got the full right now for like campaign team to fully invigorate the zombie storyline, and that's where like this is really the map Origins the beginning of the narrative, right?
The map itself is located in northern France during World War I. Its depiction of war is exaggerated beyond realism. Rather than being a simple historical battlefield, the map transforms the trenches and ruins into a nightmarish, larger-than-life setting where everything feels more apocalyptic.
But that's what World at War did as well, right? It took that emphasis and made it more than just a standardized WW2 type of campaign, which is why I think this map is still one of the greatest.
Similar to maps like Moon and Die Rise, Treyarch greatly emphasized features like the skybox, which is spectacular here. A blue-tinted, foggy skyline with giant robots walking throughout the map.
It was insane.
And countless planes fighting in the air.
For 2013, this was absolutely ridiculous fun.
The giant robots in particular brought a sense of scale we have almost never seen in zombies, making players feel small and powerless in comparison. Unlike static set pieces, the robots actively move across the map, stepping over trenches and even crushing players if they are not careful. This turns the environment into a dynamic, ever-changing landscape, which is quite similar to experiences like Call of the Dead, where the map is against the player. But the way it's done here is far more interesting. The best part of Origin's art direction is likely the clash between the World War I setting and the supernatural. For example, elemental staffs, the crazy place, and an army of zombies and panzers doesn't make any sense with the war-torn battlegrounds of World War I.
But it somehow works. It's just like Buried. Random things that somehow interconnect into a narrative that just is it.
Origins combines these ideas in an extremely interesting way, using element 115 to create something that is so uniquely Call of Duty Zombies. It is no surprise that many believe this map was the height of the game mode. Black Ops 3 Zombies was now here, and the community was desperately waiting to see what the launch map would be. And personally, I believe Shadows of Evil has the greatest art direction in Zombies history.
I still agree. Yeah, I just did the 50 perk Easter egg. This was peak storytelling narrative. Peak. And I don't think we'll go back to
is heavily inspired by 1940s American cities like Chicago, New York, and even San Francisco, combining their aesthetics into the fictional Morgue City. But like every other map in the Maximalist era, it was turned up a few notches. The map was bright and vibrant, but also featured elements of noir and Lovecraftian horror, a combination that makes absolutely zero sense, but was ultimately brilliant in execution. Treyarch likely went...
Most people's S tier maps are exactly like that. Random map, random theme, random Easter egg, all somehow collectively working together with an incredible wonder weapon. And that's COD Zombies, man. That is like... The wacky part is not what people hate. I think that's what it's kind of missing now. It's like you don't really have those wacky aspects now in COD Zombies.
And a super vibrant art direction on this map to showcase the brand new capabilities of the Xbox One and PS4. Every Call of Duty Zombies day mode from World at War to Black Ops 2 was greatly handicapped by the Xbox 360 and PS3 consoles. But now that Treyarch had upgraded tech for Black Ops 3, they could dive into the maximalism even more. For example, fog was no longer an issue in Black Ops 3. As I said previously, maps like Transit had to use excessive amounts of fog
even
to make
Origins
sure players could run the game efficiently, which in some cases held back the beginning of the Maximalist era. However, the floodgates were now open, and Treyarch could make these extravagant maps with almost no graphical limitations. This can best be seen with the skybox. It starts off as gloomy and dark with desolate rain falling on the player.
It just makes me wish we would have gotten to see Jimmy Zielinski's original visions for Victus, because his idea was like basically like what the BO2 campaign did, which is multiple different endings and storylines, and it would have been so cool if he would have had the chance to come back to COD Zombies now with the hardware we have today.
But it changes as you unlock Pack-a-Punch, revealing a giant apothecon in the sky, with a nightmarish red seeping over the map. The Lovecraftian influence continues with the enemies you fight. The towering three-headed Margwa, the tentacled parasites, the flying insects, and the meatballs, which are actually called insanity elementals for some reason. These monsters cover the streets
thing.
of Morgue City with evil and provide the most unique enemy types in zombies history so far. The visual overload makes it clear that Morgue City has been consumed by something far beyond human understanding, creating arguably the most unique and creative zombies map of all time. The next map is something a bit more simple and less innovative compared to Shadows of Evil. Shadows was a bit out there for many fans, and Treyarch wanted to...
See, that's the funniest thing. It's like the narrative at this point was so wacky, so crazy, that even the next map, Der Eisendrache, they just simplified what Origins and Shadows of Evil did, and it was a massive success still. Like, that's how wacky and out there COD used to be. You know?
A maximalist experience.
And now it feels like the opposite. It's like they're trying so much to try and put flavor and identity into each zombies map that it's like, it seems like they're siphoning all the content in between each of the maps that we've got in like Cold War and BO6.
That they knew the community was going to love, which is exactly why we got Der Eisendrache.
And for many people, this was really the peak of zombies, because a lot of people didn't get to experience the incredible aspects of Origins, but it was just remade in DE.
Look at this fan favorite map. I would ask that you consider.
Hey, let's go! Yeah, like the video. Shout out Radical Quail.
I upload a Call of Duty Zombies video.
Absolute legendary
video.
video.
That you're enjoying these videos.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anyways,
check the video out.
Let's take a look at the beloved castle in Austria. Prior to Black Ops 3, I would never use the word beautiful to describe a zombies map.
Right.
But Shadows of Evil and specifically Der Eisendrache are absolutely gorgeous.
This is where color came into the mode, and it's sad because Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 added a lot of color into zombies. And that is just not the same thing that we get nowadays in Cold War and BO6. A lot of the maps that we get in those maps, or in that game, is mainly just like the Warzone type of like browns and grays. And it's such a departure from what we had here.
It is set in a medieval castle high atop a snow-covered mountain, inspired by the real-life Hohenwaufen Castle in Austria. Overlooking a vast valley, the map conveys a grand sense of scale, making players feel both powerful and insignificant at the same time. The city below appears distantly far away, and the other mountains in the distance look huge. The snowy aesthetic and rolling clouds provides a very pretty skybug.
And it's unbelievable because Treyarch did an incredible job of making it as picturesque as it actually was when you go there. Like when you're at this castle in Austria, the mountains are literally just like that above the castle. It's unbelievably gorgeous.
Which looks even more appealing with the nice blue tone covering the outside portions of the map. The blue hue becomes even more impactful once it's combined with the 4 elemental wonder weapons. Playing Der Eisendrache with a squad of 4 players ignites the atmosphere with light blues, oranges, deep blues, and purples, making the whole experience even more visually appealing. The core ideas of the map combine a state-of-the-art rocket testing facility with a magically enhanced medieval castle, a juxtaposition that works perfectly. But there's also another aspect that carries over from Shadows of Evil. Due to story implications, the boss fight of the map involves facing off against a giant keeper, supernatural, ghostly beings connected to the apothecant.
And this kind of solidified the zombies formula we have today. Pack-a-punch, Easter egg, boss fight. And from Der Eisendrache, we have literally not evolved from that. It's now like, sure, we get a couple cool side Easter eggs there. Sure, you can get to round 100. But it's like, it is insane that from this point in 2016, it has been now almost 10 years since Black Ops 3 is released. We have not innovated from this point in Der Eisendrache in terms of the base formula of zombies.
The ethereal enemies are surrounded by glowing energy fields and are highly stylized, turning the fight into an epic spectacle of light and chaos. Overall, since Mob of the Dead, COD Zombies had been on a hot streak, combining maximalism and other unique elements to create massively innovative maps, and Der Eisendrache continued this streak. However, the following map began to shine some cracks through the floor of Call of Duty Zombies.
Yeah, and listen, even though I was a Zetsubo hater, I'm a Zetsubo lover now just because this map took a lot of risks. Sure, some of them didn't pay off, but it's still an incredible feature of Black Ops 3. Even though I know a lot of people didn't get this map.
Set in a lush, mysterious tropical island in the Pacific, Zetsubo no Shima essentially took the ideas of Shinonuma and multiplied them by 10. Where Shinonuma's environment was subtly hostile, Zetsubo no Shima makes nature an outright enemy. The overgrown plant life doesn't just obstruct movement, it spawns mutated thrashers, spreads toxic spores, and corrupts the very air you breathe.
And I think a lot of people didn't also like this map because of its color. Like, sure, it was green, but it's also quite dark, and it doesn't really have as much color as like Shadows or DE or even like GK later on. And Revelations for sure, and I get that, you know.
Nature in this map is not merely a backdrop, but an active participant in the chaos. There are crash planes, abandoned facilities, and nature infested in every single corner of the map. The maximalist art direction ensures that every element, from vegetation to eerie environments, feels alive and overwhelming. Zetsubo no Shima is not a map where you feel isolated. Instead, you feel overwhelmed. Even the two bosses on the map are deeply affected by the environment. The giant spider is enlarged
Nature versus
and
the player
enhanced by element 115 on the island.
And I think that's like what made BO3 so interesting, is the narrative per each map was really simple. Like nature versus player, or dragon versus player, you know, war-torn chaos versus player. It's hard to identify what each of the maps' identity is nowadays, right? Like it seems like when they create these maps, there's not much of a theme. It's more either they're trying to push the plot or they're trying to just make something from what they've already had. It's hard to tell.
And so is the other boss fight, Ultimus Takio, who is essentially turned into a giant thrasher, locked within a prisoner's cell. As far as coloring goes, this experience is exceptionally green, even within the enclosed parts of the map, where all of the experimentation takes place. Zetsubo's art direction is well executed, just like the other Black Ops 3 maps thus far. But in my opinion, the ideas here weren't as appealing as the grandiose nature of Dreisendrach and Shadows of Evil.
For sure, yeah. And it really was a long wait until GK, a 3-month wait, but finally GK brought it to the peak.
English as City of Blood, and that describes the atmosphere perfectly. The map takes place in a war-torn Stalingrad, and when I say war-torn, I absolutely mean it. The city is decimated. On top of this destruction, there's also another interesting element within the map. Dragons. The devastation throughout is complemented with the massive dragons flying throughout the sky, and you even get to ride one to Pack-a-Punch. Not only does this city have dragons, it also contains some extremely high quality tech.
This is also like the map that was just cinematic. Like, you don't really get so many cinematic experiences and moments like you did in GK. I really miss that.
The supercomputer that is essential to the Easter egg, the flying Valkyrie drones, and the Russian manglers are all technologically advanced, creating an overall dystopian atmosphere within this experience. The skybox makes Gorod Krovi feel even more dystopian, as its dark colors consist of dragons and planes flying throughout the sky fighting each other. On the ground, the map feels unmistakably Russian. It's filled with Soviet imagery and propaganda posters that feel straight out of the Cold War era. The colors of Gorod are largely made up of...
It's so funny because like so many like modern COD zombie enjoyers use this argument of like, oh, COD Zombies has always been copy and pasted. And it's like, dude, look at this map, right? Sure, Gorod Krovi features a part of the Black Ops 3 campaign in the Pack-a-Punch, but it's just the Pack-a-Punch area. Whereas like you go into Cold War and it's like Mauer Toten is literally just one whole Berlin Wall mission, right? And it's like, that's the type of like ideation where it's like I miss from Treyarch, where they're like, okay, we'll take something from the campaign, but we're going to add to it. We're going to make it more than what it is. And that's totally not a thing nowadays.
Tans from the buildings and rubble around, but also have a heavy emphasis on sharp reds. The eyes of the zombies, fire from the dragons, and other mechanical elements all depict striking red colors that add some much needed variation to the art direction. Gorod Krovi is without a doubt one of the largest feeling zombie maps ever.
True.
It feels as though you were
even though it's quite small,
a dimension of catastrophic war, invaded by dragons and zombies.
Like technically this map is not even as big as Derice, but it's true. Like, the boss fight is huge, and it's the scale of it. It's the environment, right? That's what makes it feel huge.
Which is quite literally what happened. To end off the tremendous Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Treyarch decided to make the most maximalistic map yet.
True. Literally in the galaxy. Calling it the final book of the Bible. I mean, this was just, like, insane for narrative, you know? Like, this was, for a lot of people, the peak of Zombies, because in terms of, like, even just viewership and the audience hype, it'll never get bigger than Revelations. I believe it. Like, people getting hundreds of thousands of viewers live streaming the Easter egg, it's like, dude, it'll never get bigger than this. It was just huge.
Revelations was very unique as it combined loved parts of many different popular maps. Shangri-La, Der Eisendrock, Kino der Toten, Mob of the Dead, Origins, Nacht der Untoten, and Verrückt were all main parts of this experience, ultimately creating an environment merged together into extreme chaos.
Which is what everybody wanted. This map was the peak of it, the peak culmination of every single theme, narrative, all put together in one. And for a lot of people, it makes sense why this was the peak, because after this is where you started to see the deterioration of the game mechanics, the deterioration of the design, and free maps, right? So for a lot of people, it'll never get as good as this map, you know?
The dark blues highlight the interdimensional location of Revelations, creating an atmospheric masterpiece. The sky above Revelations is filled with cosmic horror, as asteroids drift through space and a giant apothecon monster looms menacingly, with its belly housing the Pack-a-Punch machine, one of the map's many surreal features. Revelations handles contrasting colors perfectly. The vibrant blues of the map blend nicely with the yellows found inside the belly of the beast. The maps within Revelations are not just imported and exported versions from before. They have uniquely adjusted layouts and other small changes to certain areas.
Exactly, like what he just said there. They're not just imports. They're not just like, oh, we're going to take something from the campaign, throw some zombies in it, take out the window barriers, call it a day. No, it's like this is an actual experience, and it's tough. It's tough because it just feels like COD doesn't really know what to do with zombies anymore, which is fair because, like, Revelations was, like I said, it's the peak. Will we ever get back to this? Probably not. And so I understand that in a lot of aspects.
They also flow beautifully between one another. On the other hand, Revelations isn't just maximalist based on its looks. It gives the player just about everything gameplay-wise. The upgradable Apothecon Servant, Ray Gun, the Thunder Gun, and Lil Arnie's give the player almost too much to work with. Revelations took Black Ops 3 Zombies out on a tremendous boom, creating arguably the most intense maximalist experience in all of Zombies.
Yeah, I agree.
Black Ops 4 released on October 12th.
And it's like even Jason Mundell himself knew he couldn't do better than that, which is why he had to do a new storyline, being Chaos.
2018. At this point, Call of Duty Zombies was coming off of the immense hype that was Black Ops 3 and the Zombie Chronicles DLC, which was the most popular gaming DLC ever for a couple of years. With this hype and attention, Treyarch wanted to do anything and everything to capitalize on their recent success. They aimed to make BO4 bigger and better than ever. They created more maps with larger Easter eggs and extremely maximalist atmospheres, but they were a bit conflicted, misusing their influence. They decided to split Black Ops 4 into two parts, the Chaos and the Ether storylines.
And it's interesting because it's like, now you see the point where Blundell kind of pulled his Jimmy Zielinski from Black Ops 2, where he just took too much on his plate. It's not that the hardware was too unadvanced to conquer his dreams and his aspirations for this game mode, but it's just, it was too much for most people, especially when Fortnite just came out. It was this incredibly simplistic mode with building that was a battle royale that people were so much more interested in than, like, not understanding all these wild mechanics and different story. And for most people, they didn't care. You know, it makes sense.
Containing 4 maps. The Ether storyline would be a continuation of where Revelations left off, and the Chaos storyline was something entirely new. Either way, Treyarch was experiencing some internal conflicts on which direction they wanted to move Zombies forward. From the perspective of art direction, it makes more sense to understand the Chaos maps first, before looking at the final 4 Ether maps. So the very first BO4 map we will cover is 9.
True. Still the best map on BO4 in my opinion. Ancient Evil's up there too, but this map cooked, bro. So
Taking place
good.
in a reimagined version of the Roman Colosseum, the zombie-infested Nine is a maximalist dream. The setting feels larger than life, and the dynamic crowd either applauding or booing the player based on their playstyle is highly creative.
Yeah.
Similar to many BO3 maps, 9 showcases a bold, high-contrast palette of deep reds, burning oranges, and golden hues,
Beautiful colors.
symbolizing both the glory of the Colosseum and the zombified horror within its walls.
And a beautiful
The
skybox.
Chaos storyline as a whole is heavily influenced by mythology, which appears all around the map.
Which is such a cool way to bring zombies. It's so sad that like it wasn't really fully emphasized. And I wonder if Activision themselves were the ones that forced Treyarch to fully go down the ether route, you know? It kind of makes me wish that like they just fully ended it in Revelations. They had like the guts to do that. Just like how they had the guts to blow up the Earth back on Black Ops 1 on Moon.
Each of the 4 main temples represent a different ancient religion. Ra, the Egyptian sun god, Danu, the Celtic goddess, Zeus, the Greek god of the sky, and Odin, the Norse god of wisdom and death, each of which are important centerpieces to the map. 9 follows the BO3 trend of combining different styles into something that only zombies could do. And in the case of this map, it's the Roman Colosseum, mythology, and endless zombie hordes. Overall, 9 is one of the most cinematic feeling maps in zombies history. From the chanting crowd to the bright movie-like colors and the phenomenal setting.
You fight a freaking elephant at the end of this map. I mean, bro, like talk to me about a myriad of different themes that somehow just culminate and work together. Like you don't really see this after BO4. Like BO4 cemented this, and then now we do not see this in COD Zombies now. It is fully gone. And that is why a lot more people appreciate Black Ops 4 at the end of the day. Like, sure, the gameplay systems might not have been that great, but at least the design was there, man.
So, the new enemy types are unique and create a learning curve while playing in the unsettling underground regions. 9 served as the perfect introduction into the Chaos storyline. The following Chaos map, while being maximalistic, went about it in a very unique way.
And this is where I just wish this map didn't exist, to be honest. I genuinely think the fact that Blundell got Activision to greenlight a Titanic map is actually still insane, especially with like the whole Titanic submarine thing just happening recently. It's like, it's insane. It's insane. Yeah. To me, this map shouldn't have came out. Even though the boss fight of this map was cool.
Voyage of Despair was a Titanic-based COD Zombies map. Following in 9's footsteps, Voyage was based off of a real-life historical location.
And Treyarch was too obsessed with making it exactly one-to-one with the Titanic, and I think that is why this map failed. It was more about recreating the Titanic than making an incredible zombies experience on it.
For those of you that don't know, the Titanic was a massive ship that was said to be unsinkable. But in 1912, it hit an iceberg and sank, leaving thousands of people dead. In Voyage of Despair, the map's design is not just inspired by the real-life architecture of the Titanic, but it's heavily influenced. While it's not exactly a one-to-one scale, it's
close,
very
though.
similar.
Yeah.
Accurately portraying rooms like the Grand Staircase, First Class Lounge, and the Boiler Room. The only major difference being that it's condensed down and certain areas are either changed slightly or damaged by the iceberg, which is specifically when the map takes place, moments after the iceberg strikes the ship.
And also, like, the BO4 mechanics worked perfectly on 9. And I'd even argue Ancient Evil. And it feels so out of place. Like, what are we doing with, like, mythological statues that are perks on the Titanic? Like, I think this map also kind of solidified a little bit of a downfall because it's more of a sensitive topic. Whereas, like, sure, you can combine random aspects on, like, Buried or whatever. It's like people actually died here. And there's, like, no real emphasis on that, right? And I think for sure that definitely rubbed some people, including myself, the wrong way.
The map is tremendously detailed, and the bright reds and white of the interior blend beautifully with the dark clouds looming outside. Voyage does an amazing job of creating that isolating feeling that many early zombie maps had. Despite the grand nature of the ship, that's all there is. You are completely alone fighting hordes of zombies. Voyage of Despair succeeds in creating a strong art direction, but in my opinion, they focus so much on making the Titanic feel as realistic as possible that that they missed out on the weird and wacky combinations of other maximalist zombie maps. Experiences like Gorod Krovi combine dragons with a war-torn city and advanced technology.
And it goes to show, like, after Chronicles, they had to make 4 freaking maps for launch. It was just impossible. And even when people were hunting for these Easter eggs, it was too much.
In my opinion, Voyage is missing its own version of the dragon. Something else to help the map feel unique within COD Zombies.
Very
a franchise that, at least in this era, has always been extremely creative.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, like, this map should have been way more. And Treyarch fumbled the bag here. This is really just Treyarch's fault.
Once again set in 1912, but this time in a lavish mansion in England.
Even though this map is so cool, like vampires and werewolves, and it's like, oh, it's just Dracula type map. Like, I really wish Dracula was actually the boss fight of this map too. It's a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I mean, come on, man.
The
this was
outside
sick.
regions are dark and gothic, with a bright and lively mansion.
Amazing art direction here.
The structure itself is grandiose and feels.
And it's wild because people are now comparing this map to Shattered Vale, and I'm gonna be honest, man. I think I still prefer Dead of the Night. Shattered Vale, sure, it's fun. You fight a T-Rex, cool, but it's like there's so much more art direction and narrative and like cool aspects with Dead of the Night. Sure, is it a tough Easter egg? Yeah. No lie, it's going to be hard for you to learn. It's going to take hours, but it's still a unique art design much more than Shattered Vale, apart from the T-Rex boss fight. But it's like, even in Shattered Vale, how do we get to that T-Rex boss fight? How does it even make sense? Here it makes sense. You got vampires, werewolves, you're literally in a Dracula-looking mansion. It's tough.
Large enough to house hundreds of guests, holding extravagant staircases and art rooms. The luxurious designs continue on with the beautiful rugs, bookshelves, and dangling chandeliers. All of this rich interior design contrasts nicely with the eerie fog, dim candlelights, and dense woods of the exterior.
And it's funny because people remember the Chaos maps on BO4 more than the Ether maps. Like, my least favorite maps on BO4 are the Ether maps, and it's so upsetting. I really do now wish in hindsight that Blundell had the full creative liberty to just ditch Ether 100% after BO3, or like put like a little teaser at the end of BO4.
As a whole, this map feels dense and cluttered, with Treyarch filling every corner in with tremendous detail. The many tight spaces of Dead of the Night make facing terrifying mythological creatures such as the Nosferatu and werewolves
brings back the Baratu spawns here.
They are quick and agile, keeping the player constantly on edge and moving. The maximalist nature of Black Ops 4's DLC 1 is not only found in the art direction, but in the gameplay as well. Dead of the Night was infamous for its overly complex setup and Easter egg steps, which alienated many players, especially since the map was released with very little marketing. Black Ops 4 was continuing to become more and more complex with each and every map. Easter eggs were more complicated, maps were bigger, and the setup process took lots of effort to memorize. Since the very first Call of Duty Zombies map, the game mode was expanding and growing with every single release. And at this point, many fans had moved on, as they can no longer keep up with the long, in-depth YouTube tutorials just to pack a punch or
I mean, look at this. This is a great example. Milo's 9 Easter egg guide is 33 minutes long. Like, I agree. I get it. That doesn't appeal to the casual player. Like, no regular person is going to be like, yeah, I'm going to watch a 40 to 50 minute guide to just understand a map. Whereas, like, even when you look at DE, look at the difference on this video. 19-minute guide. That is why, like, I decided to go back and do all the Easter egg guides on all these older maps and make them as fast and as to the point as possible. Because it's just like, I get it. Back then, everybody didn't understand all the ways to do the guides and stuff. And I understand that. But it's also just like, it goes to show that the emphasis on the narrative was becoming too much. And we needed to evolve into something that wasn't just emphasis on the story. It needed to be more on the game itself. And that's why people went to Fortnite. That's why most people didn't even play Dead of the Night or Ancient Evil or anything after that, you know?
Unlock the Wonder Weapon. The growing complexity of zombies had alienated most players. However, it seemed that there was no end to this maximalism in sight.
Ancient Evil. I think Ancient Evil did it much better than Dead of the Night. But it's just after this with the freaking ether maps, this is where it's been downhill ever since, in my opinion. Like, Alpha Omega was garbage, and after Alpha Omega, it's been tough. And listen, do I hate Cold War and BO6 maps? No. But are they at the same design level as each of the previous maps that we've just gone through 42 minutes in this video? Absolutely not. And you can't even argue that with me.
Ancient Evil was the final
look
release
at
of Black
map,
Ops 4's Chaos storyline. Set in the ancient fictional Greek city of Delphi, this map was beautiful from top to bottom.
Exactly.
The famous Greek architecture is absolutely stunning. Giant statues of Greek gods, towering pillars, and spectacular marble structures make up one of the most visually stunning zombie maps to date.
That's why I rate this map an S tier still. This is like one of the last S tier maps. Sure, I love Citadel. I think it's S tier. People always hate me for that opinion. But in a lot of ways, I get it. It's not to the same level design as a map like Ancient Evil. So in a way, I get it.
The diversity in color palette is another major highlight of this art direction. The main section of this map is on the brighter side with tans, greens, faint reds, and blues. However, when you fly the Pegasus that takes you to the center of the world, the atmosphere completely changes. The faint vibrance of the main map is traded for a dark, magnificent Pack-a-Punch room, highlighted by vibrant reds and decimated Greek architecture. The wonder weapons of this map perfectly added to the theme. They were gauntlets that each harnessed extraordinary power from a specific Greek god or goddess. Specifically, Hemera, Uranus, Gaio, and Charon, the ferrymen of the underworld. The final map of the Chaos storyline is tremendous and grand in scale, causing fans to wonder why this was the end of a short-lived era.
It's insane that we still don't even know the conclusion of these characters, even with the inclusion of Chaos in Black Ops 6 now. It's quite sad.
Following the Chaos maps, Black Ops 4 had to conclude the Ether storyline with the final 4 maps, the first of which was Blood of the Dead.
To me, I just, like, looking back, I wish Ether was not a part of BO4. I really don't. Nobody really enjoys these maps.
Takes place in the infamous Alcatraz prison off of the coast of San Francisco. Blood of the Dead takes the beloved Mob of the Dead and reimagines it, adding new gameplay features, expanding the map size, and placing it in the Black Ops 4
because it's interesting, the original idea of Black Ops 4 was to have all of the original 1 to 4 DLCs be all Chaos, and I really wish Activision stuck to that. I just think they decided to go against it because they saw the success of Fortnite. They saw Blackout was not doing well. They were already developing Warzone for MW 2019. And that one decision by Activision, I think, has eternally stagnated the zombies mode in terms of a design aspect.
As you may remember, Mob of the Dead was a very maximalist experience, but being so close to the horror era of zombies, it was still very scary. I even highlighted how it took the fear-inducing aesthetics of previous maps and turned it up even further.
Like, I wish Blood and Classified were the only 2 Ether maps in the game. They concluded whatever freaking story they had to do, make the first 3 zombies maps Chaos, and the 4th Chaos map, or like the first Ether map, or the last one, I should say, DLC 4 or DLC 5 even, being the actual zombies map that they were supposed to make, being the Great War. That would have put a great narrative on the whole Ether storyline. They would have then been able to continue making one-off narratives, and zombies would be completely in a much better spot than it is right now with all of this Warzone nonsense.
With a giant zombie warden, zombies with glowing red eyes, and blood-splattered messages. However, Blood of the Dead doesn't quite manage to bring back that signature art direction that Mob had. The colors are similar,
too narrative
the map
focused.
Looks better due to graphical improvements, but the atmosphere isn't quite as impactful, and changes like the overcrowded Black Ops 4 HUD doesn't help the art direction at all. At this point, Zombies is so far from the fear era that a map like Mob of the Dead, where fear is a core aspect, doesn't quite work as well as it used to. Blood of the Dead is a prime example of the ever-increasing maximalism of zombies.
I also think this is, a great clash between fear ambience and narrative, and the narrative was more overpowering here, and that's why, like, people didn't really get to even experience a lot of the fear in this map with the cutscenes because of this one section right here. 99% of casual players could not beat this catwalk area. It was so difficult, and I think Treyarch themselves kind of put themselves in a corner with this map.
It took an in-depth masterpiece like Mob of the Dead and tried to do too much.
Yeah,
Parts of it were successful, and despite the gut-wrenching ending to the Easter egg, the map was overly complex and convoluted, and the average player wasn't interested.
Yeah, true. Yeah. The Ether maps on this game were just all so mid. And it just goes to show, like, when they needed to cut the storyline at Revelations, they should have. That was the peak. It was never going to be better. They should have done a Great War map, maybe leading up to the buildup of BO4. And then that would have been it. You know, that would have been fine.
Similar to Blood of the Dead, Classified was a reimagining of another Zombies map taking place in an important historical location. This one was, of course, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. This reimagining had many of the strengths and weaknesses we saw in Blood of the Dead. Classified was a graphically improved expansion of 5 with different gameplay features. While the original 5 felt as though a zombie outbreak had just begun, Classified makes the Pentagon look absolutely dismantled. The destruction is beautifully detailed, and just like all Black Ops 4 maps, the little things are done very well. Wires hanging from the holes in the ceiling, presidential portraits majestically hanging on walls, and vicious bloodstains soaking up the flooring. Classified even expands the confines of the Pentagon to Area 51's Groom Lake, which is where Pack-a-Punch is located on the map. Overall, this experience is far from the most maximalistic map in Black Ops 4, as it's still fairly similar to the original.
It was too focused on, we need a way to continue this frickin' Ether storyline. And that's what I mean. It's just, it felt filler. I will never forget the moment I literally talked to Blundell during Chronicles, and I was like, how are you going to continue the Ether storyline? Like, it seems like it's literally at the end at Revelations. And this is what he had in mind. And it's just like, man, I really wish he didn't do that.
Like
know?
Other BO4 maps, Classified has no traditional Easter egg quest. Instead, players unlock the final cutscene, a crucial piece of the Ether lore, by surviving 150 rounds. The maximalism in 5 mostly has to do with the extra detail placed into these small corners and pockets of the map, showcasing how zombies as a game mode has gotten much more complex since the early days of Black Ops 1.
And this game was just catering way too hard to hardcore fans. Like, Alpha, Omega, and Toggertone are such a good example.
Alpha Omega is once again another reimagining of a previous Treyarch map.
Like, outside of the story and the quotes of this map really brings nothing interesting.
In this case, we're going back to Camp Edward, or Nuketown, located in the United State of Nevada. Nuketown Zombies is expanded upon greatly. The original was a zombified version of the multiplayer map, while Alpha Omega is much bigger, even adding an expansive underground laboratory.
And I don't think Treyarch really understood that idea of, like, if this map is bad, why would the player go and play it if they can just play the original that's better? And I think that is what really put them into a massive pitfall, because when you look at all the Ether maps, there's not one original map. It's all based off of something else. And that's what I think confused a lot of players buying BO4, and a lot of people probably felt cheated for even buying the game, plus all the DLC. And then that's when Activision was like, okay, free DLC. Like, we're done with this. We're just going to give you mid-maps for the rest of eternity at this point, you know?
The atmosphere is much brighter and more colorful than the original. The skybox showcases the clouds opening up following a lightning-filled storm, and the bright sun shines on the streets of the destroyed Camp Edward. Alpha Omega feels significantly more like a government facility than its predecessor, Nuketown. Large barbed wire fences, watchtowers, military vehicles, and USA flags everywhere. The art direction of the outside parts of the map are a more lively version of Classified.
Also, just something with the art in BO4, like, sure, it had good color, but like the texture quality of this game was just not it. And I think it's because they had to slightly alter it to support the Blackout gameplay system. And that's why I also didn't like this map. This map is just Blackout, you know? It's just Warzone, basically. It's ironic because that's all we're getting in zombies now is Warzone mechanics and stuff. So it's like, It's tough. It makes me hate this map more, to be
While
honest.
the downstairs areas are reminiscent of a vault scene in the Fallout franchise, the Cold War themed diner with neon lights and checkerboard floors take you back in time. While areas like the bedroom and generators are more militaristic, Alpha Omega creates an interesting juxtaposition between innocent civilian life and deep military roots. While this map was executed well in terms of design, many fans were disappointed that the second to last Ether map revisited Nuketown instead of introducing a brand new setting.
And that's what I mean. It's the Alpha Omega and Togger Toten were not supposed to exist. It's like at this point, Blundell basically gave up on the project. He's like, I don't like where COD is going. Warzone is going to ruin the game. And it's sad because ultimately, like, I never blame Treyarch for the fall of zombies. It is always 100% Activision because they have decided to fully throw everything away for this battle royale craze. And that has not only deteriorated every other mode that Call of Duty is a part of, but it's made it so that once Warzone dies, everything dies, you know?
After dozens of COD zombie maps taking place in the Ether storyline, many fans expected the final map to be a brand new maximalistic adventure, potentially rivaling the ambition of Revelations. But instead, what we got was, you guessed it, another reimagined map.
This map should have been the Great War. It should have been the Great War. We should not have had Alpha, Omega, Togger, Totem. They're the two worst maps on BO4, in my opinion. Maybe outside of Voyage of Despair, but regardless, like, it's just not it. It's just not it. It's not it. And I'm a Call of the Dead lover. That's like the worst part. I love Call of the Dead, but I will play Call of the Dead over TOG any day.
Or the English translation,
you know?
Day of the Dead, was a reimagining of the Black Ops 1 map, Call of the Dead. Looking past the disappointing context of the map, atmospherically, it created something quite enjoyable. It took the secluded, hopeless, frozen winter of Call of the Dead and placed a radiant, hopeful sun in the sky, melting much of the frozen.
True, even this map shows that daytime is not a problem. Like, nobody really was complaining about the ambience of this map. It was more just about, like, oh, the wonder weapons are garbage, the Easter egg is garbage. Why is this the finale of zombies?
Ice away. This Siberian sunrise was absolutely gorgeous, creating one of the best skyboxes in zombies history. The yellows, oranges, purples, and blues painted the sky with a hopeful feel that was a nice change of pace for this map. That was the end of a 10-year-long story. Togger Toten was expanded upon the original, adding a new spawn room and laboratory on top of the mountain above. The map's maximalism is best seen in its sheer scale. As one of the largest zombie maps ever,
the only zombies map with 3 separate power switches that are actually power switches. Like, I'm not talking like Origins generators or like Firebase Z generators, whatever. Like, no, it's 3 power switches on this map, and they're tough to get to, all 3.
It allows players to traverse from icy shores to the towering mountain, offering breathtaking views of the entire layout, effectively ending off the game mode we love with a bittersweet send-off. After making it through 5 Call of Duty zombie games, we have seen the franchise go from a simple survival quest to a complex mystery hunt. Black Ops 1 introduced Easter eggs, and by the time Moon came around, they were the main focus, while fear was pushed to the side. Black Ops 2 welcomed in extremely ambitious maps, with some failing miserably and others becoming the most loved in the franchise.
But nobody was complaining about this because they transitioned well. The actual transition between fear to narrative to Easter eggs, it worked. And that's why people love BO3. It was the peak, right? And now it's like the transition is just Warzone. And it's like, I mean, what can we really do with that, you know?
Black Ops 3 continued building these more ambitious experiences, and with the help of new-gen graphics, crafted some maximalist masterpieces. Black Ops 4 continued to push forward, making bigger, more in-depth maps, but ultimately alienated the community. Treyarch spread themselves too thin. Creating 8 maps within one game was a tall task, and limited funding led—
Not even Rockstar Games could do that. Not even From Software. Like, no gaming studio on the planet Earth, not even Epic Games could have done that. No one could have done what they did in BO4. and they still somehow somewhat managed to pull it off quite well.
To 4 of them being reimagined ideas to end off the beloved Ether storyline. On top of this, fans didn't gravitate towards the Chaos story. On both fronts, people were less interested in zombies compared to Black Ops 3.
People have always wondered, like, even myself, and I even asked a lot of zombie YouTubers back then, why didn't the Chaos story just go to the Ultimus crew? They could have brought them back. They already did with Classified, right? Doesn't make sense.
Game mode had become too
Doesn't
much.
make sense.
Easter eggs were overcomplicated, maps were confusing, the maximalist art direction was still strong, but not as spectacular as in Black Ops 3. And most importantly, zombies no longer had anything to do with fear. By Black Ops 4, the game mode had nothing in common with its early days, which meant that a large portion of the core fan base moved on, and Treyarch was left with no choice but to change the game mode drastically.
And I agree. From this point, Call of Duty Zombies has never been the same. We have lost so many players from the peak of Revelations to what it is now. It is like genuinely sad how much drastically different it is. From Revelations to Shattered Veil, wow, has Zombies, the community, the game, the entire identity of the mode has completely changed. It's basically, for a lot of people, a way to just grind camos now, which is so sad. That is the last thing that Zombies should have ever become. It's true. And now we go to Cold War.
The era of lost identity.
Great title. Great title.
With the popularity of Call of Duty Zombies at an all-time low, the community was curious to see what direction the mode would take next. Would they continue with maximalism, go back to the nostalgic era of fear, or try something entirely new? That's a question that the upcoming Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War was going to have to answer.
Yep. True. And listen, like, I like a lot of Cold War maps. D-Machine was fun. Malware Totem was fun. You know, even BO6 maps. Terminus was fun. Citadel was fun, you know. But it's like, it doesn't have the identity, you know. What is the identity of D-Machine other than Nocturne and Totem?
A solid reintroduction into the game mode with Die Machine. Located in an abandoned German research facility in Poland, this map intelligently combined nostalgic moments of the past with brand new ideas. The old perk system came back, as well as the first ever zombies map, Nocturne Toten, which can be accessed right outside of the spawn room. It was clear that Die Machine wanted to recapture the attention of nostalgic zombies fans.
And I would say this map was the most popular experience we have had since Revelations. It is insane that the first Zombies map after Togder and Toten is still the most popular map that we've had since. No map has even come close to being as popular as D-Machine.
But that does not mean that the map failed to innovate. Features like the HUD, gun progression, health, difficulty, and even the art style were completely revamped. The abandoned facility trapped in a snowy wilderness was a nice aesthetic, but the art direction was vastly different compared to previous games. In Die Machine, colors were more dull. The bright yellow and red graffiti on the walls of Nocturne Toten,
big shout out to Warzone on this one, for real,
didn't pop all that much at all. The skybox outside of the map was fairly bland. Black Ops Cold War's art direction went for a much more realistic approach, aiming for more detailed textures but a less expressive color palette. A change that would leave myself and many others scratching our heads. Die Machine did introduce another playable dimension with the Dark Ether. When entering this new dimension, the map became overwhelmed with blues and vibrant purples, offering a nice change of pace to the otherwise stale aesthetics of the map.
And I thought this would have been a feature in every Cold War map, and then it just wasn't. And it's like, man, I think that was still honestly a missed opportunity, because this added so much dynamic elements into the map.
Other details like the HUD and armor system confused many fans, mostly because they were ripped straight out of the new Warzone game mode. Warzone was Call of Duty's version of a battle royale, and it proved to be massively successful during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It is insane that it has been 6 years since COVID-19 and we are still on this nonsense, bro.
After a few down years for Call of Duty, having an
Let it
extra
go, Call of
profitable
Duty.
game mode like Warzone proved
Let
to
it
be
go.
massively influential, which is exactly why elements of Warzone seeped into zombies. It was clear that Activision was trying to capitalize on the brand new players addicted to Call of Duty for the very first time. Overall, Die Machine was different. Despite having a trailer that made the map look quite intimidating, this abandoned facility was far from scary. Die Machine was pretty easy, and it failed to create a terrifying atmosphere.
Yeah, the ambience was fully devoid in this map. I fully agree. And from this point on, it's the same thing with every other map after. Like, after this, you have Firebase Z, which is the only original Zombies map, which people didn't like either. Mauer is a campaign map. Forsaken is a campaign map with, like, practically zero ambient change. And people were just like, what even is Zombies anymore other than a Warzone XP grinder, right? And I get that. I understand that.
However, it also wasn't maximalist. The Easter egg was fun, but not anything we hadn't seen before.
Exactly.
The map design was also sort of dull.
Yeah.
No extreme colors or crazy concepts.
Yeah.
As a whole, the map wasn't very ambitious, and the new Dark Ether storyline failed to grab the audience's attention. In general, while the map wasn't awful,
it's sad when people are more hyped about Chaos coming back in Black Ops 6 than this game mode, like, or this storyline. That just shows everything you need to know. Chaos was not even seen as like an important storyline back in BO4. Like, everybody wanted Ether, but it's that bad now that people are like, oh, just give us Chaos. Just like, that's sad. That's sad.
By any means, it wasn't spectacular either.
No. Yeah, and like, every other map after this doesn't really help out with the design aspect. Firebase Z for sure, but Mauer a little bit.
DLC 1's Firebase Z released. The spawn room of this map is quite pretty. Taking place in the Soviet Omega Outpost 25, Firebase starts off very intriguing. The skybox is a bright sun peeking through an overcast sky above the vast jungles of Vietnam. This small village is surrounded by towering mountains covered in trees. However, this village-like spawn room is quite small, and instead of expanding into an entire map, you simply teleport somewhere else, which is the actual Firebase Z.
This is an insane problem we literally even had with Shattered Veil, the most recent map. That map's fast travel is so bad. I don't care what people say. The fast travel on Shattered Veil is terrible, and it's insane that, like, the same problem from Firebase Z is coming back in Shattered Veil.
The Firebase itself is frankly quite ugly. The militarized Soviet structures are bland and colorless. The ground is muddy and brown. This lack of color and atmosphere still fails to strike almost any fear onto the player.
And then the copy and pasted enemies with the Mimic, the Mangler, it's just like, let it go, man.
World at War maps were almost exclusive.
True. Look at the difference just on gameplay here with the vibrance and the ambience on Verrucht, my guy.
Ugly, but they use tight corners, frightening ambience, and challenging gameplay to make players feel fear. However, these aesthetics are seen nowhere on Firebase. Also, it's far from maximalist as well. It's a boring military facility we've seen time and time again.
It's, again, they went from maximalist to minimalist because they were like, Warzone is now our biggest audience. We must do every single thing possible to cater every single game mode to them. And I don't know why Call of Duty decided to do that. Like, was it just Activision? Was it just them thinking they didn't have enough design merit to cater towards original zombie players? Because I can tell you this, the number one audience that has been absolutely neglected by Call of Duty in today's day and age is 100% zombies. You cannot tell me differently, bro. At least the multiplayer fans had a lot of content in, like, some games, like MW3 Remastered and whatnot. But, like, zombie fans, especially OG zombie fans from BO4 and before, are starving, man.
Unfortunately, just like Die Machine, the art direction is far weaker than Black Ops 3
or
4. On Black Ops 3, for example, Dreisendrach, Zetsubo no Shima, and Gorod Krovi all had government facilities within them, but they differentiate themselves so much atmospherically that it didn't matter. On Firebase Z, the facility is bland and feels uninspired. Apart from the pleasant rising sun within the skybox, the map does nothing to catch the eye of the player. Outside Outside of the spawn room, there are very few redeeming qualities of this map's art direction. And at this point, Cold War Zombies felt uninspired and lacking artistic.
And DLC 1 is an integral piece of the game. DLC 1 sets the precedent for the rest of the game. You can see this with every single game. Black Ops 3, DLC 1, The Rise of Drac, banger after banger. Black Ops 4, Dead of the Night, it was tough scenes, right? Black Ops Cold War, Firebase Z, it was tough scenes, right? So, just goes to show you, like, how the first DLC is such an integral, core, fundamental piece of the game's identity. And this game solidified, this map for a lot of people solidified that it's like, man, what are they even doing, you know?
Vision. A few weeks after Firebase Z, COD Zombies
and then
tried
Outbreak.
Something entirely
yeah,
new.
Exactly. Outbreak was like the penultimate idea of them just being like, we don't know what we're doing, y'all.
An open world, objective based form of zombies.
Yeah.
And while I do find it quite interesting, I wanted to keep this video to round based only. So the next map is Mauer der Toten.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it just emphasizes the point of what he's saying. There's no art direction because Outbreak is literally just multiplayer maps. It's from Fireteam Dirty Bomb, one of their multiplayer modes. It was also supposed to be the Warzone mode of Cold War. So it just goes to show you, like, Zombies now is not getting its own identity anymore.
After a rocky beginning to this new era of zombies, Mauer der Toten proved to be a step in the right direction.
True.
Taking place
Good map.
in a zombie-infested Berlin, Germany.
Good map, but again, lacking the design elements from previous maps, right? Like, you get Klaus, but it's like, people always say, like, man, I'd rather have Leroy from Buried than Klaus, right? Stuff like that.
This map actually had a very intriguing atmosphere.
True.
The dark sky was overcast with a slight purple.
It was a fun
hue.
map
The
design.
moon was
The zip
glowing
lines are
down
fun.
upon the damaged cityscape. The
Yep.
orange vibrance of fire shined through the windows of multiple buildings.
Yep.
Neon signs lined the collapsing skyline that contrasted beautifully with the dark tones of the night. Unlike both Die Machine and Firebase Z, Mauer actually felt destroyed. The buildings were
That's why I think this is still the best map of the game. Mauer and D Machine are the two best maps.
collapsing,
Still.
massive cracks
But
in
again,
the
still not enough identity to really solidify how incredible they were against, like, Buried or Origins or Mob or even Spaceland. IW Zombies, a game not even made by Treyarch, did a better job than Cold War in a lot of regards.
roads, and even mountains of destroyed cars were piled on top of each other. Mauer is also exceptional in layout. Spawning on top of an apartment building's rooftop showcases the gorgeous views of the map, but having the ability to travel to other rooftops, the streets below, and even underground lets you experience this damaged urban area in a fun, fast-paced manner. Overall, Mauer's art direction isn't among the absolute best in the franchise, but it's still very strong and worth acknowledging.
Strong in terms of what we received prior, which was Firebase Z.
Showcasing that Treyarch hadn't completely lost their touch. The fourth and final Cold War Zombies map was extremely unique.
I think unique in all the wrong ways for me personally. I feel like this map really solidified to me, like, man, the future of zombies is just not there. Like, this is why I've even stated on my channels, I don't really know that I'm going to be posting a lot of, like, Black Ops 7 zombies, for example, just because if they continue bringing back the 3-tier pack punch and the rarities and all this nonsense, it's like, I just don't care because every single map feels the same, right? And it's like, especially if it's a BO2 sequel where BO2 had none of that, and we're bringing all this back now into another game, it's just going to be garbage. I don't even want this BO2 sequel game to have gobblegums, and I've stated this publicly, which is why, to me, Call of Duty is trying to go for an audience that I just don't resonate with. I don't like Warzone. I don't care about Verdansk coming back, and that's why I'm saying, like, at this point, I've always wanted to do Grand Theft Auto content on this channel, and it's like, now it's about time. GTA 6 is just around the corner. I don't see a future in zombies when they continue to copy and paste the same nonsense across each and every single zombies map. It is utterly frustrating as someone who has been a part of this community right from the beginning, really, and seeing how every single zombies map would completely innovate it from the experience of the prior one. And that is just not a thing now.
Forsaken was located in the USSR during the Cold War.
Ukrainski!
This Soviet military base was intended to be a secret, disguised as an American-themed town. It featured arcades, fast food restaurants, and movie theaters. This creative idea paired well with the 1980s era this map took place in.
Dude, Abominations just gotta go. And that's what I mean. Like, copy and pasted enemies, slightly altered. I don't care, bro. If I want to go fight Amargwa, I'll go play Shadows or Revelations. I don't care about the random differences in Abomination. That's what I mean. It deteriorates even the identities of what was actually good. And that's why, like, dude, especially with the BO6 bosses, the amalgams, great. It was cool in Terminus. I don't care about it on Citadel. I don't care about it on the Tomb. I don't even care about it on Shattered Veil, and they brought it back only like once for an Easter egg set. It's like, just let it go. How are the developers in 2011 outdoing what they're doing in 2025 with the uniqueness of the zombie bosses?
It's mind-blowing. Bright and jubilant.
It's mind-blowing.
Taking a step back, the spawn room is outside the facility, and despite looking fairly similar to Mauer, it looks quite beautiful. The blue ripple in the sky showcases the dark ether tearing through.
It's a cool skybox, but it's just like, this map just feels like 5 survival maps pieced together with a teleporter. Like, great wonder weapons. Listen, I'll say this. Cold War had more unique wonder weapons than BO6. The only unique wonder weapons we've had in BO6 so far are the Beam Smasher and the Citadel Daymore swords. That's it. Everything else has been recopy and pasted from another map. Just let it go, bro.
Reality, bringing some intense color contrast to the map. After teleporting into the main military base, the uniqueness of the map is truly displayed. The contrast between military equipment and a stereotyped American.
True, I will say each of the areas is different, and this map does kind of feel like something out of like Stranger Things or whatnot, but it just, again, the level of the uniqueness is not there.
Town flows nicely together, creating an atmosphere somewhat similar to Alpha Omega.
This map also has like 0 side Easter eggs too. It's very bad.
The colors within Forsaken are actually quite good. While some areas have
I agree. The colors are better
other
on this
Cold War maps, the town locations are bright and vibrant. Specifically, neon purples and pinks steal the show. Atmospherically, the map is strong, but the weak layout and overly easy gameplay of Cold War holds Forsaken back from reaching its greatest potential. Black Ops Cold War had come to an end with only 4 maps, which is the least we have seen from a zombies game since World at War.
Which is actually insane. Granted though, this was a pandemic game, and it's okay, this is the craziest part. How was a game with 4 maps having more unique wonder weapons than all of Black Ops 6, which took 4 years to make? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Like, Black Ops 3 was made with a lot less development time and had way more unique wonder weapons and specialist weapons on top of that.
Cold War undoubtedly did some great things for the zombies mode. It backtracked from the over-maximalistic Black Ops 4, brought back the original perk system, and provided an experience that wasn't overly intimidating to new players. However, Cold War was scared to take any chances. Basically, all of its innovations and changes were either directly inspired from Warzone or included removing awkward features from Black Ops 4.
And we are still at this point. We don't take enough chances. Even when David Vonderhaar was making Buried, he took chances with that map. It's like they don't want to feel like they're taking any chances. This last map is called Shattered Veil. It's supposed to shatter the veil across all the storylines and bring all the amount of chances. Great, we got a T-Rex boss fight, but then it's like, why are we reusing the Rega Mark IIs again? It's just like there's so many things I just do not understand with whoever is developing zombies at this point. And I don't think it's Kevin Drew. Listen, I know Kevin Drew is the main leader of this game. It's not his fault. It's basically because they have to be confined with the Warzone limits. And that is what is ultimately deteriorating the artistic nature of what COD Zombies used to be. This wacky out there mode, which I fell off with Call of Duty a long time ago. But Zombies is the reason I'm still here. And now it feels like it's just becoming another multiplayer, another campaign type of game mode where it doesn't innovate. And that is hurting it more than helping it.
Cold War felt new and different, but in reality, it wasn't. On top of this, Treyarch somehow got worse artistically. Though Black Ops 4 had many issues, graphically it was stunning, and most of the maps were a treat to look at. In the case of Cold War, 2 maps had good atmospheres, one was okay, and one was downright bad. Colors in this game didn't pop as much as previous ones, and textures felt a little too realistic for my taste. Overall, Cold War's inability to take risks on the gameplay side and decline in art direction made the game forgettable and lacking in identity.
It's funny because like realism with zombies isn't always the answer. Sure, in multiplayer, campaign, Warzone, whatever. But in zombies, it's more about the experience that you're trying to portray, the story, the narrative, right? And we are not at this point that Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 were even able to establish now.
But it wasn't a downright failure, just a confusing moment in zombies history, leaving fans fearfully optimistic for the next Black Ops title.
Great choice of words.
On October 25th, 2024, Black Ops 6 released with 2
2020
launch maps, the first of which was Terminus.
And listen, I like Terminus, I like Citadel. But even those 2 maps, I feel like did not go as far as they could have artistically. I think Citadel was like the closest thing we have gotten since that point. But still then, not close enough.
Set in the Philippine Sea, this collection of islands were fairly interesting. The aesthetics of the advanced research facility and coal mines meshed together really well. Also, the dark and bleak atmosphere of Terminus was very strong, with rain constantly pouring down upon the player. Terminus was innovative in gameplay. Using boats to get around the chain of islands was something we hadn't seen before in Zombies.
True, and I still think that's why Terminus is kind of underrated now. A lot of people don't really even play Terminus. I see more people playing like Citadel and the Tomb more than this. And Shattered Veil, obviously, because it's so new, but
which
it's
technically created the biggest map of
I
all
think
time,
I like Terminus
if you
more and
include
more.
The playable ocean. While Terminus had excellent locations like the Biolab and Shipwreck, our introduction to Black Ops 6 was plagued with many of the issues seen
From
in
Cold
Cold
War.
War.
Exactly.
The colors were a bit dull, and the atmosphere didn't feel nearly as grand as the Maximalist era. However, it was still an improvement over the previous game. There were far more little details to this map, like zombies that would be eating a deceased soldier before you enter a room, zombies stuck in cryo-freeze chambers breaking out and attacking you, and even a giant poison cloud that chases the player if they stay in the water for too long.
And regardless of whatever your thoughts are on the Beam Smasher, at least this one map had like a fun Kraken boss fight. It had a fun wonder weapon to use. It did things. It actually went out of its way to try and experiment. And that's what I give Terminus credit for. Whereas it's like you see the Tomb bring back the Ice Staff, Shattered Veil with the Rega Mark IIs, and it's just like, dog, give me something new. How is it that the Pandemic game has more unique wonder weapons than this game that took 4 years to make? That is embarrassing in my opinion.
Terminus felt as though it was trying to re-enter the Maximalist era, but lacked some of the passion and creativity that games like Black Ops 3 had.
And BO4 too. Yeah. And Liberty Falls, I think, was like the peak aspect of this. Sure, this map is an incredible survival map, but does it innovate? Does it innovate like the old games? No, it doesn't. That's why people aren't coming back.
The launch map, Liberty Falls, takes place in a small town in West Virginia. The map captures the aesthetic of a quiet, isolated town featuring outdated buildings, old-fashioned storefronts, and a compact landscape. But the recent outbreak overtook the map with zombies, effectively damaging the town greatly. In Cold War, and especially Black Ops 6, Treyarch went for much more recent zombie outbreaks compared to maps of the past. In almost every previous zombies game, the maps were decayed and destroyed as a result of long-term abandonment.
And I think that's the other thing. I don't really like when zombies is set in one time period. Like, dude, look at Black Ops 1, bro. We went from, like, the moon to Mars on Shangri-La to some random Russian Siberia area. It's like, the stakes were so much higher even, like, 15 years ago. It's, like, insane that, like, Call of Duty can't even match that same level. I mean, dude, you can see one of the DLC 4 maps literally right here in Liberty Falls. Shattered Veil is just to the left right here. You know, like, that in and of itself, I think that idea sure might have sounded cool in, like, a boardroom meeting. But practically for zombie players, it's just like, dude, I don't like that every single map of the DLC is practically right here in Liberty Falls.
Or
It's
zombie
just sad.
inhabitants. However, in this era of lost identity, the destruction seen around the maps is significantly more tame, which isn't as successful at capturing that Call of Duty Zombies atmosphere that we know and love. While Liberty Falls has strong elements like the unique...
And listen, I've heard a lot of people that hate my guts even say that it's not the maps, it's the mechanics. And in some aspects, I do agree with that, but it's also like, it's the design ability of this map. Like, what's really the difference of Shattered Vale versus Liberty Falls if we were to not talk about wonder weapons and just design, like you just running around the map? Practically nothing. And I think that really nails it on the head. It's something with the actual layer of design in the map. People like Maurer Tone because of Klaus, I think, because he was a new design mechanic. We don't have any of that. You spawned with the same specialist, the same weapon, the same gun, the same armor, the same everything. And it's like, who cares if the high round strat is with one weapon or with the mutant injection? It doesn't make enough of a difference to give it an identity. That's the biggest issue with zombies right now.
Unique zombie design that ranges from high school cheerleaders to farmers and a beautiful dark ether church room, the overall coloring of the map is quite bland. Liberty Falls is similar in concept to Town from Black Ops 2. While Town has worse graphics, it creates a strongest atmosphere because of the massive destruction. The lava seeping out of the ground, the damaged buildings that have giant holes.
Yes, it's such a great comparison. Liberty Falls, an incredible survival map, sure. It's fun to play, fun to grind camos. But Town is like, let's take a city, let's light it on fire. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the wackiness that we're missing from COD Zombies. That's the artistic nature, that the creativity, they're just too scared to do, or it's just not there anymore.
In the walls and more make Town feel much more like a zombie infested town. Liberty Falls was obviously not going for the extreme decay seen within most zombies maps. But in my opinion, that art direction works much better for the game mode.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, like, as much as I love Citadel, you can't help but compare it to Dreisendracht, Origins, or any other map with 4 elemental wonder weapons. And listen, I think that is why this map is an S tier for me, because it copies and pastes the formula of the most successful zombie maps ever. But still, a lot of people argue it does it worse than those maps, right? Even on a design aspect, even on a side Easter egg aspect. So it's tough, because it's like, it's just not enough into the design of what they're trying to do that makes these maps iconic enough.
Citadel des Morts released as a part of Season 1 Reloaded on Black Ops 6, bringing back that castle aesthetic that Zombies fans know and love. Taking place in a European castle, Citadel was conceptually similar to Dreisendracht. However, it managed to create a uniquely strong atmosphere. Citadel was mostly brown and green. The colors once again did not pop as well as maximalist era maps. But in this case, it made more sense. This map was an old run-down castle. Citadel was somewhat foggy and eerie, creating a sense of mystery zombies hadn't seen in years, specifically the spawn location. You load into the game eyeing the magnificent Guardian statue, and behind him is the Citadel itself, which is probably the best foreshadowing we've ever seen in zombies. Other locations...
It's sad, because Shattered Vale kind of tried to do the same thing, but it didn't hit as good as Citadel, in my opinion.
Such as the courtyard that overlook the bottom portions of the village are quite pretty. Unfortunately, the skybox is plain and forgettable, as it's overcast during the daytime.
Yeah, the color is not the same level of integration as like DE or Ancient Evil or 9 for sure.
Citadel is 100%. An atmospherically rich map, making it the strongest so far in the era of Lost Identity, but it's still held back by issues that plagued Black Ops 6 and Cold War. The fourth map in Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is the Tomb.
And it's sad because BO6 had one of the best launches for a COD Zombies game ever, even despite its artistic downgrade. And the Tomb, for so many people, I think the reason why not a lot of people even care about Shattered Vale is because of this map. This map, in my honest opinion, should not have existed. It should not have come out. Treyarch should have scrapped it the minute they even thought about trying to replace Origins with like a survival ice staff map. It's just, it would have never resonated with the community. And I think it's just sad because now nobody even cares about the rest of Black Ops 4 or Black Ops 6, I mean, because the rest of the maps are just Liberty Falls expansions, basically. It's sad. It is sad. There's like no design
mixed
now.
reception about the gameplay mechanics of this experience, the art direction is quite interesting. The spawn room takes place in a compact archaeology site. Following that, the player enters the tomb, which is full of countless skulls on the walls, ancient statues, hieroglyphs, and more. Then the player ends up in the temple, which is a stunning underground area filled with mystic energy. The tomb also features the Dark Ether, which offers the best skybox zombies has seen in over 5 years.
Since Revelations. And I know I've made a Twitter post about it, like comparing it between Revelations. Regardless, it is a great attempt. It's just like, you got to wonder, is it like because of their sticking with the Warzone engine that the skybox doesn't even look as good as Revelations, or what? Like, I just don't know enough about the back end of Treyarch, right? I'm only just a YouTuber guessing. But it's like, it just goes to show it's quite interesting how 10 years ago on an engine that wasn't fully Warzone, people were able to make more immersive, more believable experiences than what we have today in Black Ops 6. And that's just sad. You think like as time progresses, like we're literally at the year 2025, things would be even more astronomical than they are now. But it seems like we're just selling you nostalgia for an overstated price, you know?
The most impressive part of the tomb is how jam-packed it is with ideas, even though it's tiny. Every room serves an atmospheric purpose, which can't be said about many of the maps.
No, that is very true.
The only major issue with the art direction is a problem that affects all of Black Ops 6. The colors just don't stand out to the level that they did in Black Ops 3 or 4. In my opinion, this game needs a massive saturation increase on every map.
And I don't think that could even fix it. You saw that in Forsaken with a massive saturation increase. The only thing that can fix it is if we leave the Warzone engine. Zombies will truly never return unless the Warzone engine is dumped into the ground. And it's like, this is not happening. Verdansk just came back with Shattered Veil. Activision will literally suck all the money out of the Warzone audience until the zombies community is like at its lowest point ever. And then hopefully to God they finally bring it back. But that's just a guess. They might not ever. I don't know. We'll see.
In summary, the art direction of COD Zombies started strong in World at War, scaring players off with the unsettling tones of the maps.
Right.
Black Ops 1 held on to this fear, but created more ambitious, complex ideas, taking zombies to the next level. Black Ops 2 shifted the goal of zombies away from fear and into maximalism, which led to some growing pains. Black Ops 3 further enhanced the maximalism with the help of the new and improved graphics, proving to be the peak of zombies in the opinions of many. Black Ops 4 expanded maximalism even more, ultimately making the game mode too complicated for most players. Following BO4, Black Ops Cold War reset zombies, beginning an era of casual gameplay and a lost identity of art direction. So far, Black Ops 6 has improved upon Cold War's ideas, but failed to bring back the impactful art direction that zombies used to have.
And it will never come back unless they just decide to ditch the Warzone system. And that, I think, is the ultimate artistic downfall of COD Zombies, is that they're trying to make one mode based off of another mode, and it will never fundamentally work. You just can't do that.
Call of Duty Zombies is a game mode that was never meant to exist, but the passionate developers at Treyarch had a vision they wanted to bring to life. The mode quickly developed into something massive.
And I always say this, listen, if Zombies doesn't evolve to this point, I will be fully leaving this game. It's at this point now where it's like, YouTubers need to start getting fed up with what Activision is doing, because these Zombies maps they're putting out in BO6 last for about a week, and then nobody cares about it after. And it's like, why would I put my whole heart and soul and my whole life on the line for something like this when there are developers like Rockstar Games creating literal masterpieces that people have been waiting over a decade for? Make it make sense.
spreading
Make
its
it make
influence
sense.
among not only those within the gaming community, but even pop culture. Currently, Call of Duty Zombies doesn't know what it wants to be.
Exactly.
It's still enjoyable, but not quite to the level of its glory days.
Exactly.
Either way, Black Ops 6 has a lot going for it. Citadel des Morts is genuinely a great map,
It's
and
a
the
great
other
map.
3 experiences are a lot of fun as well. Even Liberty Falls is enjoyable, which is exactly why you should go and watch my last video, The Biggest Lie in Zombies History.
Radical Quail,
From its
this
inception-
was an incredible video. I gotta like this video. This is probably one of the most well-explained videos as to why Call of Duty Zombies is in the state it has been. Check out this video, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see y'all in that next one.